got ruined. The other live stream crashed, and I just switched to a different internet source, and hopefully this works. I'm really sorry that it crashed. I saw that I had a super chat that I was just about to talk about, and everything crashed. So that's not cool. But hopefully people will pop in now, and we'll get back going. So thank you to the super chatter, whoever that was. I think it was BN something. And there's the Bug Hub. There's Jonathan Brendel. We got people coming in. So I am so glad that people are finding the stream again. There's Wendy Hickson as well. Great. So what were we talking about? I don't remember exactly. There's Paula, and there's Biggs. Excellent. So all exotics, we got some people who weren't in the original stream too. I see Christine, the beetle guy. And I really apologize to the super chatter that I missed your full super chat before everything died. So, oh, BD Lexin, it was you, right? You were the one who gave the super chat. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. I see Chris and Kevin are again. Round 2, fight. Let's go. Let's go. All right. So I lost track of what I was talking about before everything kind of went messed up. So if anybody has can remind me of where I was, I would be most grateful. Anyway, yeah, my mind is drawn a blank now that we're back. But I do appreciate Sandy sent me a comment in the on Patreon about the stream being frozen, and I was trying to get it back, and I couldn't get the other stream to work for the life of me. So there we go. So if those of you who have comments, many people were mentioning that they were interested in getting a critter, a crocheted critter for my daughter, and they had specific requests like blue death veining beetle, dart frog, that kind of thing. Make sure you put it in the comments. So the beetle guy, the last thing I heard was and okay. Yeah, we're back over here. I'm sorry that other stream died. Now I'm gonna have to keep an eye on the clock so I don't go too far over. And that means we've got about half an hour left. In 28 minutes or so, that's when I'm going to have to cut it. So cool. All right, perfect. Got about 25 people in the stream. We've got 10 likes. We're making some progress. See Random T's back with us. So let's chat about stuff. What are we chatting about? Got a snake over here, a corn snake who is hanging out. Ooh, theropod hunter, a crocheted eurypterid. Eurypterids are used to be known, and I think this name has fallen out of disfavor, but used to be called sea scorpions. Do people still call them that, sea scorpions, or not? I'm not sure, but a crocheted one would be super cool. That'd be something that my oldest son would be totally into. That's awesome. Isopods. Jared, welcome. Made one of the live streams. There's a green Jedi monkey, trilobite, totally cool. I'd be up for that too. Oh, Kevin got you Santa Cruz garter snake female. I love those. They're so chunky. The Santa Cruz, they are really cool. I've seen those at Don's garter snakes when I've gone over there. He's got some Santa Cruz, and I love their chunkiness. They're very cool. So all exotics. Oh, good. Glad to know your isopods are loving the Supreme Isopod Chow. My isopods love it. That is why I have become a distributor, because I think it's fantastic stuff. I've used it for long enough to realize that it's great for the isopods. Not only do they love it, they breed really well on it. It's my main supplemental food that I offer. I do offer, other things, but that's my main supplemental food because it's awesome. So Aunt Sandy skink, a crocheted northern blue tongue skink. That sounds fantastic. So, okay, sometimes unofficially called sea scorpions. Yeah, I think the name used to be more commonly used with eurypterids, and I think it's inaccurate enough that it's sort of fallen out of disfavor, but I'm glad it's still used unofficially, just from the standpoint that means, yeah, I know what you're talking about, eurypterids as sea scorpions. Cool. Yeah, that's true, Kevin. They have some yellow to them, and they're really gorgeous. Chris, you're buying isopods on the way home and have cork bark in the car. Sounds familiar. Awesome. So, Ramingo, if you could spend one day in one of your enclosures with one of your colonies accordingly shrink or accordingly shrunk, what would it be? Which one would you choose? Good question. It would not be the dairy cows because I don't know if I would come out alive. Um, it might be my Armadillidium gestroy because I think they're really chill, they're beautiful, and it would be kind of fun to just ride one around. How about that? Oh, green Jedi monkey. Did they eat all your moss, or did they just love to hang out on it? Well, theropod hunter. Okay, yeah. So that clarifies that. Entelodonts are no longer officially called hell pigs. That's so sad. I love that name, and that's they really, at least in the Walking with Monsters special, they made them really look kind of like hell pigs. Luch has Christarmadillidium moricatum, Florida orange marina, Gestra and Ducky mix, and 200 Paracai and Orange Klugai Montenegro. Wow, you got some nice ones. Now, Orange Klugai Montenegro, that's one I don't have and I want. I have the orange uh, Armadillidium werneri, but I need to get the Orange Klugai Montenegro. And anybody who would like to trade for Orange Klugai Montenegro, I could probably trade you something. I also don't have Florida Orange Marina. I have Anemone, which I love. I need to get the orange ones too. Biocontrol for overpopulation. Where? Where? Okay. Just 1 second. Folks, where is he? I'm gonna keep him. Okay. There we go. Sorry, just having a little altercation with pets. Um, he's getting some enrichment time, but looks like he needs to come over here and hang out with me instead. Okay. Thank you, Laurelyn. The cat was getting just a little bit too interested, so no more snake crawling around on the floor at the moment. Um, Looking for some help, Jonathan Bramble, with marmor crab babies. It's been difficult to make sure they each get food and population dwindles as they get bigger. Does anybody have experience with those? Those are the also known as the self-cloning crayfish. They're illegal in my state. I've never even seen one, but so I can't really comment on that. But if anybody has experience breeding those, maybe they can help us out. And that's the nice thing about cork bark, Kevin. Nothing's going to hurt it if it's in your trunk for a month. Grayson, favorite insect and favorite arachnid? Well, it changes from time to time. I must say, one of my favorite arachnids is the amblypygids, the tailless whip scorpions. And one of my favorite insect taxa is the mutilids, or the velvet ants. And Shane, I gotta agree with you. The Walking with series, so much good nostalgia. And Andrew Roy, well, armadillidiums are pretty fantastic. So yeah, if you have that self-control, then that's fantastic. And Paula, I'm glad you love corn snakes as much as I do. And Kevin, I 100% agree with you. Fortunately, there's no cord on this mic, but he might just pop it off my clothing. This is my strap for my glasses, so we'll see. He's good at tangling and pulling it off. He does that. And Mr. and Mrs. Murley, I got a super chat. Not sure you caught a super chat last week. You don't have to hold the orange creams for us if other people are waiting for them. Life has been complicated, lady. We don't want to hold anyone up. I think I remember you talking about that, and I'll make sure I have some for you when you're ready. But I do appreciate you letting me know about that. So if I end up letting some go before that, then I mean I can do that. I'm glad I know that I can do that. But I will make sure that I always have some for you when you're ready. Appreciate that. So beetle guy, have you ever experimented with biocontrol for overpopulation isopod enclosures, like a predator pick off some of the extra pods without killing all of them? Indirectly, in like dart frog enclosures and stuff like gecko enclosures. And I've never had overpopulation in like a leopard gecko enclosure where they can eat some of the isopods, or a dart frog enclosure where they eat, depending on the isopod species you put in there. If you put dwarf whites in there, they're never going to eat all of them because it only takes one to reproduce in general. I mean, they could eat them all. It could happen, um, but you can also put a larger isopod in there and they'll eat some of the babies, but they won't eat the adults unless you have something like Terribilis. Dendrobatus terribilis will eat, larger isopods, but most of them are specialized micro predators, so they're not going to do that. And so that's what you could do. So Romingo are those white spotted Jestroy more widespread now. I think they prefer them to the yellow version. I don't know how widespread they are. I love them. I don't know that I prefer them to the yellow version, but I think they're just as cool. Usually I don't like things when you take out the natural coloration, but just for some reason the white spotted Jestroy just blow my mind, and I love them both the same. And I don't know that they're more widespread, but I think they're becoming a little more available at least. They're super cool. Blake Despain, how the morning geckos? Doing pretty well. Lots of eggs. Usually in the winter, I get a dip in hatching just because of the cooler temperatures. But then as soon as spring starts warming things up, I get a boom. So I just have a couple of juveniles now because I sold off quite a lot of them. But I have lots and lots of fertile eggs. Dairy cows eat crusty eggs. Good question, Gecko Man. I think it depends on a lot of factors. And I think really hungry dairy cows would eat crusty eggs, and it's not super hard to get dairy cows really hungry. If you make sure there's plenty of other food in the enclosure for them, I think they'd be less likely to do it. But I wouldn't 100% trust them with crusty eggs. I'll tell you that. Could have any pet invert with the intelligence of a human. What would it be? Oh, that's kind of scary. Good question. Maybe a mantis. Maybe a mantis. That could be fun. And so mysopods with me if, and I stress if, I ever get reptiles outside my desert geckos, AFTs and leopards, I may go garter snakes. Something about communal animals fascinates me. Mysopods, I 100% agree. That's part of the reason I got into garter snakes, because I love communal animals, especially animals that we will reproduce communally and not just live in a group, but be able to successfully produce babies and not eat the babies or whatever. I have a lot of communal creatures, and I love that. That's part of the reason I'm fascinated by harvestmen, because there are communal species of harvestmen, and I have colonies where they're breeding. I have communal fish that will breed that way, and so on. It's just whatever it is. I mean, isopods, of course, are that way, communal breeders. And the garter snakes have very interesting interactions. Watching them interact with each other, watching them interact with you, they're fantastic. And mysopods, this is a corn snake, probably a hypomelanistic corn snake. We got him as a semi-rescue, like a rehoming. And he was, they didn't know what morph he was, but I went onto the Corn Snake Morphs Facebook page. Hopefully he's not messing up the mic too much. And they said he was probably hypomelanistic. So that's what I'm going with. And Jotaro, he does pull off my glasses sometimes. Totally does that. So, Theropod Hunter, a sea snake with flippers? That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And Green Jedi Monkey. Oh, you're getting tight there, buddy. I think I'm going to need to move him because I'm going to turn purple in a second. There we go. Okay. He's a strong little guy. So I got lost with what I was talking about as I was about to faint here. Oh, Green Jedi Monkey was asking about tips for selling morning geckos. Not really worth it for me to get a table in an expo if that's the only thing I'm selling. Totally understandable. Yeah, I usually, if I bring morning geckos to a table, they're just one of many things that I sell, and they usually go pretty well, but I see what you're saying. I sell them online fairly often, and the fact that I can ship them does help. And if you're willing to do that, that will help a lot. But also sometimes if you have a friend who is going to be vending, and you can have them buy your morning geckos at like a discount a little bit for buying a bunch of them and selling them at their table, that you can try that too. So Jared, any info on getting golden geckos to breed? Got a proven pair yesterday. Congrats on that. I haven't worked with golden geckos. I wonder if Wally Kern at Supreme Gecko has done that. So Kevin, you got the tarantula cribs cube with removable top and clear back. Oh, I love those. I want to try one of those. I really do. They look fantastic. I have, as many of you know, a number of tarantula cribs enclosures of various sizes, and I love them. Every single one of them. Let's see. So Zero Cool, you can definitely keep springtails with bumblebee millipedes, and I highly recommend that you do so. Grayson, what made me interested in insects? I think I was born that way, to be honest. My mom tells the story about how when I was 18 months old and I surprised her by filling my pockets full of earthworms. And even though earthworms are not insects or even arthropods, they are small critters. And I've always been interested in all the small critters and big critters, just critters. So yeah. Oh, Christine, I hope you get that clutch of eggs with your Phyllobates bicolor uraba pretty soon. Yeah, I really do think springtails are really good. Let's see. Ramingo, what are 3 things you wish you would have known previously about isopod keeping? Okay, 1, I wish I would have known that when you use wood pellets in substrate, it's not a bad thing, but you're not going to get the benefits that you want by doing it unless the conditions are right. And generally that means you're not going to get much benefit from adding wood pellets to your substrate unless you ferment it first, or you inoculate it with white wood, or mushroom mycelium or something like that. Otherwise, the isopods are not going to get many nutrients out of it. So it makes a lot more sense if you're going to go ahead and buy wood pellets to make flake soil out of it, or make kinshi out of it, or make white rot wood out of it. Then give it to your isopods, and they're going to benefit a lot more. So that's one thing. So I've talked about this in other videos. I no longer add wood pellets to my substrate because unless I've done one of those other things, or I've purchased, kinshi, I add that, flake soil, I add that kind of stuff. I will add white wrought wood to my substrate. I just won't add just straight wood pellets. Something else. I wish I would have understood ventilation a little bit better about isopods. The methods of ventilation I used early on, they worked. They're fine. But for example, cross ventilation, I use more holes higher up on the enclosure than I did when I first started. I did cross ventilation right from the get-go, but rather than, I used to put it lower down and then cover it with mesh or of some kind, and now I usually just put it up high and don't bother with the mesh. And I wish I would have known how to deal with fungus gnats when I first started out. I wish I would have known about rove beetles that eat fungus gnats. I wish I would have known about the catchy traps that I now use that end up managing the fungus gnats. So I guess those are 3 things. Terminal overkill, you ate a bee when you were a child. What isopods exhibit predatory tendencies? Jane, there are aquatic isopods that are more predatory in general. I've heard that pakchongs will eat springtails. I've heard that dairy cows will eat dwarf whites. So there's a couple that will do that. So Dan, I see a super chat from you. Thank you. Made it to 2 lives in a row. And add wood pellets to bioactive as a long-term biodegradable. See, I think that's fine. That's totally fine. If you add it as a long-term biodegradable with the understanding that it's going to take a long time to break down, that's totally fine. I just think that sometimes it's added to substrates, and I've done this myself in the past, added it to substrates expecting it to be um, dealt with a little bit more quickly, and it took forever. So yeah, I no longer just add straight ones to isopod substrate, but I see doing that as a long-term item totally makes sense. So hypochondriac, you have 6 juvenile Armadillidium vulgare. How long will it take for them to grow and breed? Well, it depends on the size, and it also depends on the strain. Wild types seem to reproduce, at least some reports indicate that they'll reproduce less often. And then different localities breed at different speeds. Some of them grow faster and reproduce faster. Some grow really slowly, like the stock from which the true magic potions were isolated, take a long time to grow up, and they're slower to breed than others. So it really going to make a lot of difference. And of course, the size, like I said, I've had some, like orange vigors, will reproduce at about a quarter size of an adult, like a essentially fully grown adult, about the quarter of the size. And I've seen that happen. So you can get that sometimes, but it just really depends on your strain. Yeah, Luch. Yeah, the Pak Chungs. That was Tanner, from whom I heard it, I think. So isopods. I live in an apartment in first year doing isopods, so I expect to have to rotate bins for heat, cold. It depends on how extreme things get and which species of isopods you're working with. In general, I don't rotate my isopods, and in the winter, my minimum temperatures in my isopod room get down to around 65, and this does depend on the part of the room because I have parts of the room that are on walls that are cooler and parts that are on walls that are warmer and things like that. Um, about 65-ish on the low side, and then in the summer it gets up to about 78. So between 65 and 78, and I have not had to move them except when um, our swamp cooler broke shortly after we moved into the house. I didn't have nearly as many isopods at the time. I did have them, but not as many. I had to move them all downstairs in the basement because the temperature up there was 98, and I didn't think that would be particularly good for them. So Ari Natris, how do you take care of fungus gnats? They've really taken over my setup. Look into rove beetle fungus gnat predator. The species is Atleta coriaria, or Dalotia with a TIA at the end. Dalotia coriaria. They will eat fungus gnats. You can buy them from greenhouses and biological supply places. Generally, like a greenhouse that sells biological controls. You can get them, and they will eat fungus gnats. So if you can get them colonizing your um, isopod setups, it's really cool, and you can get them for fairly cheap. And also the catchy trap. I have a video on the catchy trap. Basically, it is a cylinder with a UV light up at the top and a fan that pulls things down into it, and then a sticky trap at the bottom. And it's really good for handling fungus gnats. And I've heard about the diluted hydrogen peroxide. Not sure what that would do with the isopods. I've heard about using it with the plants. Um, and Sandy skinks, yeah, we've had conversations about the rove beetles, and they really help. After getting the rove beetles in the catchy trap, I asked my wife, and I said, how are the fungus gnats? How are we doing on the fungus gnats? She said they're like 90% reduced. Um, Ramingo, you don't 100% need to get springtails, but I highly, highly recommend them. They are an additional assurance against fungal issues, against mites, they do help against fungus gnats. They help against just about everything. Um, I would say if you have the chance to get Springfield, absolutely do. They also are a good way to help establish a bin before you put the isopods in it. I like to put springtails in a bin a month or two before I put isopods in, if possible. And so, yeah. And Grayson, are you one of the first people to breed blue death wing beetles? Not the first person, but among the first. Yes, I would say I'm among the first, and I was the first one to publicize my breeding methods, like in a fairly large way, I guess. And I learned from other people first. Dean Ryder was like the pioneer who cracked the code. There was a temperature thing, and he said you get to 88 degrees Fahrenheit and you get them going. Um, so listening and reading about what he had done and others had done, I just sort of used those methods and then publicized my progress of my breeding project, and that's what got people into doing it. Now we got a lot of people breeding them. And Luch, glad the Vigors are doing so well, and the USA Magic Potions, fantastic. So aquaballs, what's the hottest you can take them? Like isopods? Does depend again on the species, depends on the speed with which the temperature increases, lots of things. So Luch, I just keep my ducks at room temperature. Um, so like the temperature variations that I described before, that's what they get in most cases. I do have one enclosure that's heated. It's got side heat on it, and I also have to see how that does. It's kind of an experimental enclosure, but other than that, napalm will work for fungus gnats, but you don't recommend it. Oh, random tea. That's another thing. Nemonites. Um, Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis is a bacterium that kills fungus gnats, and it's in several products. And nemonites is not that product. Nemonite, I believe, is a nematode that kills fungus gnats. There are some indications that those nematodes can damage isopods as uh, well as fungus gnats. So I have avoided using the nematode route, but the Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis, as long as you don't put it directly, the solution directly on isopods, seems to work really well, and will uh, kind of that can go a long way. I know some people who just use that as a control, and it works really well. And the sundew plants, I've kept which one? Drosera capensis, the Cape sundew. Those will eat fungus gnats too. So that's a great point, Rochelle. And Gecko Man, if you have everything set up properly, you should be able to leave most isopods and millipedes for 2 weeks, with some caveats. If your humidity is extremely low wherever you are, your enclosures could have very, very low ventilation and still be subjected to drying out. So keep that in mind. But assuming your humidity is within decent range, and you have deep enough substrate, and you have a good hydration station with some absorbent material like sphagnum moss, uh, and you have plenty of leaf litter and things like that, most isopods and millipedes uh, can be left for 2 weeks. During the holidays, I have some isopods at work, and I have left them for up to a month with no issues, where I come back and find a happy, healthy colony. Just make sure to hydrate them well. There's not excessive ventilation. The humidity in the room is not terribly bad. So there you go. So BTI seems to be safe as long as you don't get it directly on the isopods. I know someone, Ashley Niebel, one of my patrons, has been using it for a couple years with all of our isopods, no problems, no fungus gnats. And I've heard butterworts work for fungus gnat control as well. I just haven't experimented with butterworts. Okay, the beetle guy. Found a YouTube channel that was able to breed blue death fighting beetles without an incubator. She did it even before at the same time as Russ. It's called Rachel Gratis. Interesting. I need to check that out. Yeah, predatory mites are a good option too. They will eat some species of springtails, but they do go after the fungus gnats for sure. Yeah, I've never tried sundews in an enclosure. I've just kept them as potted plants, but I am excited about the idea of getting into those again. It's been a number of years since I kept them. They're pretty easy to grow too. Basically, they like water with very few dissolved minerals in it, so something like distilled water or RO water, and you just keep them in a little dish, like I think somebody just mentioned in the chat. Yeah, Rochelle mentioned it, Rochelle Workman, um, because it needs to get a lot. They need a lot of water. I kind of you keep them very similar to Venus flytraps, except a Venus flytrap has an obligatory diapause or obligatory um, dormancy period for a long term success, and um, the Cape Sundew does not. They can be induced to go into a dormant state, but they don't need to, and I can just keep going. So Paula, I don't think you can have too many springtails in an Isopod bed. They can get very dense population, but I don't think there are too many. Um, so mysopods with me, do snakes enjoy human contact due to the warmth we emit? I think sometimes they do. This guy really seems to get a kick out of hanging around my neck. He'll do it for like an hour at a time. And it may be that he's absorbing warmth, it may be other things. He's definitely getting some enrichment, dealing with different textures and surfaces as he's, crawling up the back of the wall there and stuff. Um, and it's a change of pace. It's something different. So, oh, there he goes. He's grabbed my glasses. Okay. So Christine, you remove substrate from dark forest enclosure to redo the viv. Can I dry it out outside, being it's cold where I live, and reuse it? Are you doing that to get rid of something that was living in it? I'm curious. And Luch needs a video on Christine Melody Morikawa. Once feel like I've dialed in their husbandry and they're breeding and they're thriving and I've had multiple generations of them, I'll make one. Might be a while though, because I just haven't kept them long enough to really give any tips. My spots, I love that. Mike, because he loves the mic so much. Um, where is my mic anyway? Did I lose it? He's wrapping it up. Sorry, I hope that's not too loud. Unplug that and then put it back in my. Ooh, boy. How did you even do that? There we go. I'm just going to hold it for the moment because he's playing with it. That is a pretty cool name. My son, to whom the snake actually belongs, named it Mr. Skeletal. So that's what it's called. But I do like that name. And Ramingo, I've actually written a couple of books. They're both pretty old, but I wrote one on isopods for kids years ago. It's called Roly Poly Pets, and it's available on Amazon. It's an ebook, uh, and all the care information in it is, I would say, a little bit dated, but still functional. I mean, I wouldn't have written the book if the techniques I put in the book didn't work. They did work. They do work. They will still work if you follow them. I would make some changes to it if I were to. Ooh, he's really pulling on the glasses there. I would make some changes to it, but it's there. And I also wrote one called the Aquarimax Guide to 7 Easy Live Foods. So those are both available on Amazon, and they've been available for a number of years, and I've sold a number of them. So there you go. I haven't written any more books because I find that uh, focusing on YouTube is more fun and more rewarding for me. I enjoy writing, but I enjoy doing YouTube more. So I'm focusing my discretionary time on that instead. So Andrew Roy, what is a generally good tip for keeping isopod monkey alive to adulthood? One is making sure that they have plenty of leaf litter, plenty of hides, not too overcrowded in the enclosure, and making sure that they always have that moisture gradient from day one and keeping it that way, because they are kind of vulnerable to drying out when they're small. Yeah, you did, Jotaro. You knew the glasses issue was coming. I highly suspected it was coming too. That's cool. He is hungry. He's got a couple of rodent sickles with his name on them that are thawed now. They should be thawed upstairs. It's his feeding day, so he's excited. So I'm going to go feed him in a minute here. And thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Morelia. I certainly enjoy YouTube a lot. Um, it is it's been an amazing journey. I really started it seriously in about 2016, and I really enjoyed uh, getting to know so many people and helping people and learning so much. So it's pretty fantastic. Thank you all for being a great community. I should head out so that I don't step on anybody else's live streams. But everyone, take care. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for the super chats, and check out my video on blue death fanning beetles and other desert beetles this Friday.